Hey everybody, welcome back to Dr. Homebrew. I am Josh Newton from the Tabletop Journeys podcast, here today to talk about the fourth mission in Keys from the Golden Vault, Prisoner 13. And let me just say off the rip here, I loved this mission. I thought it was fantastic on its own merits. A really, really fun mission, just echoing also some comments that folks had said that they were really excited for me to go ahead and talk about it because they ran it and were very excited and had a lot of fun running it. I can totally see it. And let me say, too, that having read now the first 6 or 7 missions in the book, I think that this is the one that, by and large, I have taken the most notes on. I think there's a lot to go ahead and talk about in this mission. And you know what? I'm also going to throw out a suspicion here. I cannot confirm it, but for me, this mission had friend of the show Sadie Lowery written all over it. I suspect that Sadie wrote it. There's just a lot of hallmarks, and if you're not familiar with her work, go read Call of the Netherdeep. She was very involved in the writing of that book, and some of the other stuff that kind of came out from Wizards of the Coast around that time. Or go listen to our interview. It was from about maybe 2 years ago or so. Go listen to the interview that we did with her on the Tabletop Journeys podcast, and you'll kind of get maybe the same feeling that I did. I tagged her on Twitter to go ahead and see if she would confirm or deny that she read it. But Sadie, if you're listening, crack the mystery for me. Did you write Prisoner 13 from Keys for the Golden Vault? And I mean that with all compliment possible. The premise of this mission is super cool. I loved the entirety of the concept. It is grim, it's gritty, it's got this really cool noir feel about it. It's morally ambiguous, which is something that at the tabletop role-playing game space can be done very, very effectively, I think. And this is one of the missions that I thought could be paired really well with other missions that come later in the book. I talked about that in kind of the introductory episode about what I was going to be doing here. I thought that this mission in particular pairs really well with missions 5 and 7. So we'll be talking more about that when we get to those missions too, about how to run kind of like this triad of missions and what that actually means and kind of what I think the through plot is in between there. And look, let's be honest too, any mission that's got airships, A+, right? Gonna absolutely gonna love it. And that's one of the coolest things about the prison is it's got like an airship tower that you can go ahead and dock to. So that makes it super portable as a mission. We'll get more to that when we get into the ratings itself. You know, talking about the NPCs in the mission, I thought that they were good for the most part, right? I thought that they were very video gamey in the best way possible, and that they were both rich characters, but also super specifically focused. They had a specific thing to do, but they still felt rich and real. That's a really tough edge to ride, so it really shows some care was put into the construction of the NPCs in this mission. I will say that I wasn't crazy about the twist with the Warden, where they are possessed by this dead dwarf. I thought that was a step too far, and I'm not totally sure what that twist really serves in the mission. I also kind of am putting up my radar a little bit here. I wonder if playing that could get a little goofy in a way that would feel exploitive for people. Would they see negative aspects in a portrayal of that character? I'm not totally sure that I dug that. You know, but for the most part, NPCs were pretty good. One of the other things I want to say is that I think with the mission itself that there is a little bit of lifting that needs to be done by the storyteller to not make it feel railroady, right? There is very much kind of a set path that the players need to follow to do a very specific thing. And I think that absent of any context, it makes it tough to kind of justify why they're doing it. It also kind of affects exactly how useful this mission can be, right? Because if you don't have... there are a lot of missions that you can go ahead and drop in there just as like a side quest diversion, don't really need any context outside of the mission themselves. This one needs a very specific purpose in mind. And so if the mission gets too railroady on that regard, again, that's something that you need to add a little bit of context in order to make it feel less railroady, but that context can only go so far, and I think that the mission really pushes on that line pretty heavily. So, you know, I think that limits its utility a little bit in kind of the grand scheme of thing. The other thing I want to say is that the big magical MacGuffin, that did not resonate with me at all. I thought it was kind of, my notes here, I wrote that it was a weak-ass magic item. And the reason is because it doesn't make any sense, unfortunately, right? It specifically says that when you're using the magic item that gives you the map, nobody else can see it. So how do other players see it if you are using it as a player? How is Varen, who's the NPC that gives it to them, how does he illustrate that it works if nobody else can see it when he's using the item? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but this magic item didn't seemed like they were trying to go ahead and add a technological aspect to the map, which is cool, to kind of give it that kind of like space agey kind of again kind of Eberron-y type feel. But that one just didn't resonate with me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing something about the magic item itself. So if I am, feel free to go ahead and drop your comments down below and tell me what it is that I'm missing. I think there's also kind of a big plot hole that really kind of, again, needs a little bit of massaging from the storyteller. And that has to do with the kind of path of least resistance into the adventure, where your group of adventurers pose as guards that are stationed at the prison. There are only 25 guards at the station, and they go into detail about how close-knit they are, how well they know each other. So how do 4 to 6 new guards get integrated into that group of 25 without arousing any suspicion? It's a great opportunity for roleplay, but like all things collaborative world building allows, you have to give it the opportunity to fail. And how does that impact what's going to happen in the mission? Because don't forget, too, one of the greatest things in this mission is that suspicion metacurrency. The way for storytellers to kind of judge what the attitude in the prison is at any given time. I think that is super useful, and it is a really nice way to provide new storytellers a way to navigate the sorts of interactions between player characters and non-player characters that it's really easy to both under and overplay. But the suspicion mechanic gives a nice, elegant way to kind of judge that and navigate that. So very well done. But I think that you might need to, as a storyteller, be very aware of how things like integrating with the prison guards is going to affect the overall suspicion mechanic. Don't be afraid to go ahead and pull those levers and push those buttons. I think the other thing is that one of the points that they lean in on is how all the guards have memorized the name and a number connection between all of the prisoners that are there. And that's fine. Like, you can go ahead and hand wave that as a storyteller. That's no problem. But don't. Make sure that as a storyteller, you are taking the time to go ahead and drop Easter eggs for your players through that, right? If there are particular numbers that are important, if there are prisoners that you want to go ahead and include in there, make sure that you use that to your advantage. This is an awesome opportunity to go ahead and raise that. So don't be afraid. Don't back away from that. Lean into it. Make it obvious. Make it topical. Give them some context to the job that they're doing. It'll make this mission make much more sense when you bring it into your table. All right, so let's go ahead and start here. So as always, we're going to go ahead and pop up our metric here and talk about 5 different categories: the mission, the NPCs, the map, the vault hooks, and then that wildcard category. We're going to judge them 1 through 4 and give the mission itself a total score here. So we're going to start with the mission itself. Mission gets a 3 out of 4. I think it's a fantastic mission. I think that it is very much kind of an episode in a jar in that way, where you do need to kind of take it as whole. It's less useful. It has fewer kind of solid hooks to go ahead and get into it. It's a very specifically focused mission, and so you need to go ahead and use it in a specific way. I think when we start talking about the NPCs, I also gave that a 3. For the most part, they're fine. I think the warden being possessed by a dead dwarf, a step too far, but give it 3 out of 4. Otherwise, the NPCs, particularly Prisoner 13, is a very, very interesting NPC to go ahead and bring to your game. I thought that the map itself was a 4 because as a prison layout map, if you didn't do anything else, if you dropped everything about the mission out and just needed a prison map, it's very, very cool. It's isolated. It has limited ways to go ahead and get in. It has a lot of really kind of cool magical bits in the prison. The map itself is super duper useful. Talking about the vault hooks, I did not think that the vault hooks were very good on this. That moral ambiguity is a really important kind of hallmark of why your players would be going on this mission. But again, there's very limited reasons why you are approaching the problem. There's not a lot of kind of opportunity to stretch that and to kind of plug it into other things. So that gives the mission, again, a real limited utility. You have to be very specific about using this mission in your game. I think the other one with the wild card, the reason why I give this a 1 is because, again, the mission itself is so solid on its own. There's not a lot that you would want to go ahead and pick out and kind of use on its own. I think the one exception to that is going to be the suspicion mechanic, but again, that really depends on whether or not it has a place in your game. limited utility, even if it's super cool. So that makes the wild card here a 1, and that gives our total rating for the episode, for the mission here, a 13, which puts it roughly in the middle. We've had a couple that were higher, but that puts it roughly in the middle. I figured, that's going to average out to about 2.5 out of 4. So that's going to put it right in the middle, kind of right where you'd want the mission to be for kind of a standard. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Prisoner 13. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to drop your comments down below. Write us, contact us, let us know what you think. And we will be back next week with Talkworks Clockworks, which again, kind of a nice Eberron-y, and the one that I thought would pair really well with this one here. And I'll get into the reasons why I thought that next week. Thanks so much.